As you say, as an older man, it resonates in how I live my life, that I've had this experience. Right? There's some level of racial integrity, there's some level of validity that came with that, right? Because I was there. You know what I mean? So it's not, it wasn't, I didn't miss the moment. I didn't want to be there, but I found the value in it, right? And I was going about it, I guess, in a long-winded way. But I got an opportunity to introduce my son to the Minister Farrakhan at one point, right? On some personal, private, go sit down and talk to the minister type of deal, right? And he was like, I don't care about same energy I had, right? But I remember picking him up from school or something maybe a week later, and his teacher was like, he said he met Minister Farrakhan. Now they treat him like he lied. You know what I mean? No, yeah, he did. You know what I mean? But the point is, he went to school with that story, like, check me out, Joe. You know what I'm saying? So even though in the moment it was like, yeah, it was just, but when he left, there was some value attached to it. Sure. Right? So and that was, he was a young boy then, he's 19 now. Context is important. My daughter hasn't necessarily had the same experiences he had. Like, she wasn't on my hip as much as he was on my hip. And the connectivity is a little different. Now, she get it because my house is my house. You know what I mean? But it's a little different. And he carried it like a regular 19-year-old would carry it, but there's something going on in the background. It's like, nah, this has a value. So that's what the value of a Tim Black is. Right? That's what the value of all of us in this room is as well. Though. You know what I mean?
But that's also the value of quality parenting, which I know is an offshoot of what this book is all about, right? Like, we can parent for the kid that's in front of us, or we can parent for the adult they're gonna be 30 years from now, when they have no idea what they're gonna need 30 years from now, but we know today, right? And so I think, you know, it's such a dance because we got raised by boomers who didn't, my mother would flat out tell me to my face, you put your feelings in your back pocket. That means she's about to make me do something I ain't down with that I'll appreciate later, right? But we had so much of that I think we was like, when I have my kids, I ain't gonna have the moments. I'm gonna make them happy all the time. And they were so happy that then they got to be in their 20s and 30s and they're not equipped because we didn't take those moments where you sad now, but you're gonna be greater later. You know what I mean? So it's got to be that dance of still fostering and fortifying relationship, but also giving them that medicine that they need. Is strong, but it's necessary. And I think we haven't always balanced that well as a people. We tend to, like, you know, 1 minute everybody get with an extension cord, the next minute you 13 and you at a Taylor Swift concert by yourself. It's like, where was the middle ground, you know? And I think that Charles Blow, even in Shut Up in My Bones, the book before this one, he does a lot of teaching that's in that middle space where you kind of have the medicine and the applesauce, you know? And I think that's something we kind of got to get back to. What you smile about?
Because ain't no kids had no, you know, medicine with no applesauce. That's our generation.
Well, right, exactly. That's exactly right.
My kids didn't eat no applesauce
Mm-mm.
at all. I don't even think I had applesauce in the crib.
No, they had them go-go squeezes.
Right, exactly.
They didn't even have to do no work, and that's exactly my point. It's full of sugar and they squeeze it right in their mouth. It's over. You know what I mean? That's just a metaphor for the things that this book is trying to help us see, like, and you know. So I haven't spent a lot of time around you, but the time that I have spent around you, you've been saying the whole consistently, we gonna have to do this ourselves. Like, this ain't gonna work no other way. People become interested, and as fast as George Floyd made them interested, is as fast as they became disinterested. And now you got Sonia Massey, what was that, 3-4 weeks ago?
If that.
And they like, we already did that, we did George Floyd. Huh?
But see, I think that goes right back to Tim Black. Yeah. Right? It also goes back to my father. It goes back to your statement as well. I think context is so important, right? I think in that conversation of good parenting, we also get into the conversation of identity,
Yeah.
right? So when you pull back the layers, the reason my father would make me go see Nelson Mandela instead of going to hoop or going to do whatever was, my desire at the time, is because he had a value in racial identity, right? But Black life is a political declaration. So racial identity has been the definitive up until probably this generation, I would assume.
So I'm gonna hop in there. So what happened?
I think we get into it in some of these conversations and
So
questions.
what happened? So like I guess like my question would be, we kind of we knew who we were at some point, and like there's been a loss of a link, right? In chapter 1, Mr. Blow is really going into like the Great Migration, and how our folks ended up coming up here, and so all of us, at least a lot of folks that's our age, we understand when and where our people came from and when they got up there. So my question to the group would be like, when did y'all people come to Chicago, or like what's the story of even how y'all got up there and where y'all come from?
And do they know?
I'm asking y'all.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So where your people come from?
So my people originally originally we came from Southern Illinois because my great-great-grandfather, they were indigenous. So we're from Illinois, for real, which is a different narrative, right?
It really is.
And then, so my great-great-grandfather, my great-grandfather were on this land. And then women were brought here by way of slavery and all of that. And so my great-grandfather married my great-grandmother, and she was 14 at the time. And he married her to keep her from becoming a sharecropper because she was hard of hearing. She was hard of hearing, and her vision was bad. So if you can't catch it by 3rd grade, you out of school, and if you out of school, you go to the field. He married her to keep her from going to the field. And then they built a life together in Southern Illinois in a tiny little town called Ullen, but it was near Carbondale. And so my people are from that place. But even though I know that story, when I was growing up as a kid, people be like, I ain't Black, I got Indian in my family. And I would be like, well, you Black. Cause I'm Black and I got Indian in my family, right? And I was probably 8. So you can start to feel the disconnect happening already. And then when all the talk about, there's such a serious litmus test for who can be indigenous that in a lot of spaces, it doesn't even feel like you can say you are if you're also Black, So when I look at the foolishness that's happening right now,
Like how Black is Black.
How Black is Black, and even like, whether we agree with or disagree with or we riding with Kamala Harris or not, the reality is her social identity, her ethnicity, her culture, her race is what it is. And it's being taken away. And we've been doing this, sometimes to each other, sometimes it's been put upon us, and it diminishes our narrative. So by the time I was 10, I knew not to tell that part of my story. I just was a Black girl from the west side of Chicago, that's it. You know what I mean? And so even when we know where we're from, there aren't always safe spaces to tell the whole narrative.
That's true. My people, my mother and my father's family are from Mississippi. Mom's side is Greenwood. Dad's side is Belzona. My father's, and so where we live, and they came, my great-great-grandfather came from Greenwood to North Lawndale. and the home that my parents live in now is still our home today. My entire family still lives on that block. I live in North Lawndale, 1 block away from where I grew up, so we are deeply, deeply rooted here intentionally. Something that I would say that I think is really, really interesting in my family's history is, so my father has a 3rd grade education. He is the smartest man that I know. He has a 3rd grade education. He left school to take care of his sisters, his siblings. And he came to Chicago when he was like 15, met my mom, rest is history, right? One thing that I recognize, particularly in the story, in the book, is when they were talking about how there would be these mediators between people coming from south, migrating north, that there was a way that you had to be. You couldn't be loud, you couldn't be, you had to be away. You understand what I'm saying? You understand? You understand?
They went to the west side. Are you listening to her story?
I'm trying to tell you.
Finish your story.
I'm just saying. So I think that there's this dynamic that I literally have seen play out in the psyche of, especially when you get into skin tone, especially when you get into education. I literally have seen it play out in my family, right? And I've seen it play out amongst dark-skinned men in my family versus lighter. You know what I mean? It's a, reading it was just like, this thing is so deeply seated, and I think that it impacts generations in an unspoken way that I think has impacted politics and everything, right? And so my father, even before he came here, he grew up on a plantation. You know what I mean? So his mom, the way she had to live, he was friends with the slave owner's grandson. You see what I'm saying? There were like a lot of dynamics that came up here, and he had to button up and be, you know, and he a straight blue collar man's man, but he had to button up and be away and even accept the approval of my mother's great grandfather, who was a light-skinned man that migrated from the south and knew how to do the things and was a homeowner. Do you see what I'm saying? So a lot of, that's what's just, I know we were talking about just kind of where we came from, but I wanted to highlight the significance of how you had to be even in the migration, and how that impacted stories and generations once you got here. You know, we're not even talking about going on the street and having a fight in gangs, Chicago gangs, and that element of it, because you're a kid from the South. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a whole different thing too, but yeah.
I think those nuances that you speak of is partially how, you know what I'm saying, like, even, I was just fucking with him real quick about it, but you know what I'm saying, like, the whole elitism, you know what I'm saying, like that came from, you know what I'm saying, a particular class. It's like, oh yeah, well, you niggas came up here last from Arkansas, Tennessee, wherever y'all came from. And we came up here first because we from up south, so we came from like Kentucky or wherever else, you know what I'm saying? So we came up in the first migration, you know what I'm saying, because we was closer. You deep south niggas, y'all done moved, you know what I'm saying, like the further west y'all move or the further south y'all move, Inglewood's like, oh man, y'all not one of us, you know what I'm saying? And so like, that has continued to play into, in my opinion, the politics of this city, right? Which is fractured and created an environment in which we now, like, we got the semblance of power, right? But we ain't got no real power. And so like, with that being said, like, we, like, understanding what power is ownership, right? The people that came up here didn't come up here. Some people came with nothing, but some people came with a lot of stuff. So it's like, okay, well, what was it that they traded coming up here from down there? In my own family, you know what I'm saying, we had a whole bunch of acres of land. We down to 10 acres, at least on my dad's side. On my mother's side, we ain't got shit. right? But they came up in the first Great Migration. My pops came up in the second. But we still holding on to land down there. So if you could talk a little bit, you know what I'm saying, about like what your people may have left south. Cause you know what I'm saying?
I don't have no idea, because what they left was everything, even their families. I was just thinking about it as we were talking. You know what I mean? From the patriarchal side, my father's side of the family, I got a greater understanding of his history. It was a much bigger family. You know what I'm saying? Like I got some like 17, 18 great uncles on that side of the family. He's like the oldest daughter's son, so I grew up like through my first uncles. You know what I mean? So his father came up here from Louisiana, from New Orleans, and just listening to the conversation, one of the things that his father always told him was never go back. Also, and this is context, I don't know nobody in my granddaddy's family, but there's a lot of them. I don't know nobody. They probably still in Louisiana. I have no clue who those people are, right? From the matriarchal side of my father's, my grandmother, she's from Kentucky. My grandfather came up here after World War II, though, and to your point, that same house that he was one of the lucky ones he got out of the GI Bill. That same house still stands. My aunt lives in that house. It is the house that everybody retreats to. It is really the only anchoring point we have in our family, right? It's interesting context too, just what blackness looks like, even in the North, right, per se. That same builder built that same house, and what's the neighborhood the white boys living in by South Park? Bridgeport. Legitimately the exact same house. That house over there in Bridgeport appraises for something like 1.5. It appraises on 95th for 80 bands. Legitimately the same house with a different address. You know what I mean? So context is everything. On my mama's side, I don't really know them people either. You know, my grandmother died very early. There is some context to that color scheme too with both of these families though, right? My grandfather was from Indiana. I don't know if it's by way or somewhere else. I don't know. Both of them people was gone in my life early, and it wasn't like a conversation. But my grandfather on my mother's side, my grandfather was on my father's side, a dark-skinned guy. My grandfather on my mother's side, light-skinned guy. But my great-grandfather on my father's side was one of them almost white dudes too. So I had these two almost white dudes, right? One of them aligned with I'm gonna roll with this white man shit so I can get ahead in life. You know what I mean? The other one moved like me. Fuck this light-skinned shit. You know what I mean? He just had a very different energy, and he had a different kind of life too. It was a much harder situation. You know what I mean? That's the one that had 17 kids. You know, living in a Bronzeville tenement at the time. All 17 though. You know what I mean? Plus their mom and dad. You know, it really was 19 because two of them passed early. You know what I mean? But it's interesting. I don't know what the hell is that side. I don't have no contact with it.
Do y'all got any experiences with the South?
In terms of living?
I mean, just like, you saying like, school, living, family there, any connection.
So my parents live in Atlanta now, though nobody, you could say that Georgia is the South. I don't think Atlanta remembers that it is the South. But I digress. So my parents live there now, and but because our South, when my family said down South, they meant Southern Illinois, which was still very much North. But because of our conviction about our blackness, when they moved north, meaning to Chicago, they moved to the west side of Chicago. And so we are often assumed to be from Mississippi, because people think everybody from the west side is from Mississippi, right? But what I find interesting about this whole conversation is like a lot of what you saying too about, and you too, Jim, about like what we as people have to put on or take off, right? And even what you were talking about, Yolanda, when you were saying, you know, my dad came and he had to be this kind of way and he couldn't be that kind of way. We got all that stuff for white folk. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like if somebody gonna stand on my neck, right? And I know somebody gonna stand on my neck, then I'm like, well, whose neck am I gonna hurry up and stand on? Because that's probably gonna keep my neck from being stood on. I'm not justifying it, but I'm like, do we need to say where it came from in order to give ourselves permission to relinquish it? So if you just keep, you know how we see kids in school, they be acting a whole fool. And we be like, why you keep acting fool, boy? Why you keep acting fool? All you do is act fool. Then his daddy come in the building and act fool. I used to be a school principal, so I've seen things. So then the daddy acting a fool, and you like, okay, you act like that because that's what you saw. So if I can talk to this kid and get them to see this came from somewhere, which means it's outside of you, it don't have to be inside of you, then they might take it off to put on something else. But I think sometimes in our community, we just keep hearing how bad we are, but nobody's saying who our father was, right? Who gave us these things, and then we can just give it back to our daddy, who can keep it. And in this context, I mean, particularly white men, we just following this whack-ass model they gave us. And I'm not saying it to like vindicate us from our complicitness, right? But I am saying, if we could be like, now you know that wasn't ours. We didn't act like that before we got here. So how were we before the infraction? It gives us a place to go back to. But if all we got is what they keep giving us, in some ways we just keep following the model.
So part of the reason I'm asking what the connectivity is, right? Because what I found in my experience with folks is that they ain't got they don't have a link into none of, you know what I'm saying, they family line. A lot of folks did exactly what, you know what I'm saying, what your people said. It's like, man, don't go back. You know what I'm saying? And they gave up where they was from. Now imagine if somebody was like, oh yeah, you know what I'm saying, don't go back to Mexico, right? Mexicans come up like, don't go back to Mexico. Nigeria, oh man, forget Nigeria, right? Don't go back there, you know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like you would be relinquishing your identity. I can remember growing up, you know what I'm saying, so my father's side, they were like directly from Mississippi, right? And so growing up, you know what I'm saying, I would have people always coming up and be like, yeah, oh, you talk country, they try to shame me, right? Because of the way that I talk or the way that I acted, right? And I'm like, ain't nothing wrong with Mississippi. Should I go down there every year, right? Every year for weeks on end. What I see down there, you know what I'm saying, it's a little bit different than up here. So like the way that we, like as a family, jail was a little bit different than some of the other folks that got down up here, right? And I would argue, at least in my own family, right? It like, because all I gotta do is just look back one generation, which is my problems, right? Like I know how people from this city act. I know how people from what we call the Sticks Act to the people like, you know what I'm saying, that's a little bit from the more urban area. But it's still a culture, right? And it's almost like, in my opinion, we have given up our traditional culture to take on a new culture. And is that new culture good for us? You hear somebody say, oh man, I'm from Chicago. And like, we didn't build this city. We didn't build this city. I'm a builder. We didn't build this city. Right? We did then what we are continuing to do now, which is to continually to like put blackness or reclaim like to take over white space, right? We want y'all table. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to build no table. We want y'all table, and we gonna put our spread up on there, and goddamn, we gonna get mad when y'all come back and say, hey man, this is our table, man.
Hold up real quick. Here's some basic data. The average American never travels more than 8 miles from his original home. That's basic data. So you get into our shit, it might be less than 8 miles. Right? That's why you got kids on 7 miles here and medicine downtown. Right? So just context, I'm using my own life as an example. I'm one of them, I stand on Chicago people. But just in the context of this conversation, it's all like that. Those people raised that past. Chicago is the root for me. You know what I'm saying? My grandfather said don't go back there. Again, it's just in this conversation. He got sisters. I know my father got aunts, and I've never heard them people's names. My name is Tucson. You know that's directly from Louisiana.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they name me in the tradition, but I don't have nothing rooted to the tradition. My root is 95th Street. Like, no bullshit.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it don't really go past that. So to identify with that, and I'm not knocking it, you know what I'm saying? It's not a real thing for me. It's damn near like the first migration from Africa. I don't know what the fuck is over there, bro. I don't have no context to that. You know what I mean? I know I got family there. They probably my age, they probably fuck with me, we probably have a great time. I don't know who the fuck you are. You understand what I'm saying? I have no connectivity to that. They have no connectivity to me. You're a foreigner.
So Tim, let me ask you this question real quick. So when Jim says, we didn't build this, we builders by nature, in our DNA, right? If you got black blood, you a builder, right? And so when Jim says, as a room of builders, we're builders, and we didn't build this, and you like, okay, maybe, but it's all I know. How does that connect or disconnect? How does that connect or disconnect?
Even in the context of the conversation, them Mormons on 95th Street built some shit too. They built a family here, which is why I'm so deeply rooted and connected to here. It ain't even Chicago, it's 95th Street.
Yeah, got it.
You understand what I'm saying? Because that's where that Werner gene was rooted in the context of my experience, right? Now I've been south. Check this out. The first time I've been to Mississippi was when we went, well, you didn't go with us, but that time, right? That wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? Now in my mind, I was like, I've been to Mississippi before. For some reason, I felt like I'd been to Mississippi before. Because it's fairly well traveled, you know what I mean? But I got there, I was like, nah, I ain't been to this shit. You know what I mean? But true story, I was connecting to spirit in a way that I never connected to spirit. I could feel slavery in Mississippi, bro. I could feel connectivity to the ancestors in Mississippi. Right? And I can't say I've ever had that experience anywhere else. You know what I mean?
You been to New Orleans?
Yeah.
How did that feel for you going?
I've been to New Orleans a bunch of times. New Orleans is some different shit.
It's jubilant.
It's different.
It's different. I'm just curious
Jubilant
because
to me.
it's in you and out of you.
Mhm.
So how did you, like, what was your social experience?
And it might have been the energy I was on in New Orleans too. You know what I mean? You gotta be, you know, I'm older going to Mississippi. I was there for different reasons.
Yeah.
I was in New Orleans to do what you do in New
Different
Orleans.
things. We're talking about ancestors lately.
Yeah, I'm trying to make some new generations. So maybe that was it. I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's just interesting listening to the context of the conversation.
I got some I wanna just a couple things that are turning in my mind. So you talk about your family saying don't go back, and then you're bringing up the disconnect from the traditions, right? I think something that is very, very prevalent. So like to your family would say the fact that you got that disconnect, but y'all done built your situation. Your people would say your ancestors would say we did what the heck we were supposed to do, right? Maybe. I think that this idea of leaving a thing behind is because it was so much pain attached to that for so many people. Do you know what I mean? And it might be, it's like this. So I sell real estate, right? I see a young generation of people in my community who are walking away from their family buildings because they are trying to get away from all of the guns, all of the shooting, and all of the pain connected to that. Like they literally cannot find joy, pride, or whatever because they saw their grandmamas, their mamas, their daddies, everybody do nothing but suffer, struggle to pay the bills for the sake of owning a home in that particular community. So for the sake of anything, they gonna move somewhere else and rent instead of try to stay there in that thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that sometimes when people have an association to pain in a place, they are trying their darndest to make sure that their children have something different. And they don't want them to go back to that because pain is connected to that. And I think that that plays a role and needs to be considered when we're talking about, until you get to the point where, I think it was Zora Hurston, her experience, she said she had nothing but black experiences. Do you know what I mean? She went to an all-black elementary, all-black high school, all-black HBCU. So her experience and what her family in her lifetime was able to give to her was different from other people who did not. Their experience may not have yielded what hers did because it was connected to, I got a pain point right there, and I don't want you to have that pain point, so let me kick you over here, and we're gonna start over here and try something different. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand it totally. I understand this, and it's actually feeding into like kind of how this flow is going.
Yes,
Mhm.
for sure.
And so, that being said, think of, let's ponder it from this point of view, right? So we in a city right now where we got 45,000 new folks right in our neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? And that's on top of the other folks that we ain't seen that came in from Ukraine. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause they put them around the white folks, right? But this is like something I see, right? Because I've been blessed to be able to travel extensively, right? And what I see when people bring their asses into our neighborhoods, you know what I'm saying? They real quick shit 2 weeks ago wasn't they flying their motherfucking flags and shit because they had an election, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So they like when you got people who are dealing like they came here from a whole nother country. So wherever they came from, it had to be bad for them to come here. But they ain't lost their link, right? So in the sense where they flying their flags like we from here, right? And they'll do it right in your face, like yeah, well I'm from here, and from right.
But I think that they, man, I think that they came. I think that they're coming under a different context, maybe. Based on this, we come in saying this the way you act when you come. I got neighbors, they fixing their cars and putting oil in my front yard, fixing their car. Who's telling them the decorum of how to act on the west side of Chicago in America? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, for us, based on this, for us is when you go, if you want to make it, you got to act like this. Who's doing that for them?
That's what I'm saying. So like, I think we're saying the same thing. So why is it that we have to continually leave our identities, our home, where our blood, our sweat, our tears, our memories are, right? We gotta leave it in Mississippi. We gotta leave it in Southern Illinois. We gotta leave them on the west side so we can go out to Westchester.
That's
you know
right.
Like we
That's
gotta
what I'm
move.
saying. Even right in our own neighborhoods. I grew up in Austin, born and raised, and hurry up and go. Go to college, get your degrees, get out of here, right? Right now, I work 3 lights from where I was born. Because I'm like, well, if everybody leaves, what's the implications of that? You know what I mean? And so, but I sit in this tension gym where I'm like, y'all ain't got nowhere to send my baby to school. And then I hear myself say that. So then I started school, literally started school in Austin. So my baby, I got to build every institution. Come on, man.
That is what builders do.
Right.
Okay, yes, it is, but where's the coalition of builders? Because it should be on one back.
I think perspective is everything. Right? So this goes back to that fucking original statement about me and Nelson Mandela. Right? So, and the conversation really yields all the way back to 1619. Like the difference between the Venezuelans is they Venezuelans.
Period. And they know they're Venezuelans.
That's the conversation.
They know what Venezuela is.
They're Venezuelan.
They abuela's still there.
You know what I mean? they have a culture that they've created. They have an identity that they get hang on to.
And
right?
they saw what happened to us, and they don't want it to
Even if we
happen to
go
them.
back to 1619, right, we got this kind of idealistic view of slavery, like they just grabbed motherfuckers from one yard. No, it was a bunch of motherfuckers from different cultures with different understandings, with different languages, different all kind of shit. You on the boat with a motherfucker, you can't say what we want. Right? I flew to China one time. It's true shit. I'm by myself too. We hit some turbulence. It ain't nothing. Me and a bunch of Asian motherfuckers. I mean, real Asians. No speaking English Asians. And I'm nervous because this turbulence is very different than regular turbulence. I'm looking around this motherfucker like I can't even express fear to you motherfuckers because we can't understand each other. It's a different feel. You know what I mean? So when you think about that contextually, you pull from a bunch of different regions, different places, and mold them together. Their identity is what the fuck is happening once we get here.
That's their identity.
Right? So, and it's not a new thing. Even though Venezuelans is coming over here now, give them 50 years. Give them 50 years. They're going to be the whitest motherfuckers you ever seen.
What is that gonna mean for us though, right? And so we are right now in the middle of, and this just, you know what I'm saying, like I try to drop gems wherever I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are in the middle. We are right now in the second half of the reverse Great Migration south. So we had two portions of the Great Migration north. The Great Migration south started in 1990 and ended in 2020. And this is like, and much like the first Great Migration, you know what I'm saying, when we studied like the 60 years that it went on from 1910 to 1970. From 1940 to 1970, the cities were flooded with our people, right? I'm predicting that there is going to be a flood back south between now and 2050. With that being said, it's like what are we to do moving forward? What do these neighborhoods look like? We already know that West Inglewood, man, you know what I'm saying? I don't even know we the majority over there no more. You know what I'm saying? In West Inglewood. I'm tripping when I'm in Austin, right? And I'm hearing roosters, you know what I'm saying? Like the people that's buying the houses, they don't look like us. We done ran, and wherever we going, most of the folks that moved like to the suburbs of Indiana, but then you got people that's moving south, right? And so as we continue to move forward, how do we hold on to what it is that we did create here?
So I would say this. I think we gotta also understand why we're doing it. You know what I mean? It's different if somebody is moving south because they want to. A lot of this stuff is economics, right? If I look at North Lawndale, where I am, and I'm in this housing space, right? So a 3-bedroom, let's just say a 2-unit house, 2-unit building in North Lawndale, let's say East Garfield Park, right?
That's what I live.
5 years ago, right? Maybe it needs a little bit of work, $250,000. Today, $450 minimum.
New bills is 600.
I'm talking about need a little work. You understand what I'm saying? How many of us got that for that?
And then you own social media, and the South already know this is happening here. So they're like, hey friends, we're your algorithm. Just want to let you know you can get these 5 bedrooms and 3.5 baths for $250,000.
You think it ain't
I text my fiance like, yo, we is doing it wrong. Look, you know. But then Chicago it's in my blood, man. I can't stand it. I wish I could get it out, because then I would go get one of them $290,000, you know? And I'm like, well, maybe we just buy one and Airbnb the shit, but still stay here with this craziness we got going on so we can be builders. Like, it's literally, you gotta contort yourself to stay here.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So I hear the stance that you're taking, but what I'm saying is, yes, people are moving south, but if they had a choice, You know what I'm saying? I don't know that migration would be looking like that for social power. I'm just being honest. I'm telling you what I see. My personal experience.
Okay.
I don't know that people would be making that choice for the fight of the situation. I think they're doing it, and I think that there are some advantages that we can take. I think that it will allow some advantages, but I'm telling you from what I see, crime and money.
Okay,
Most migrations is based on resource. It don't matter
why
who,
people go.
why,
That's why
where,
people
it's
go.
resource
Yeah.
based, right? But I'm gonna go back to the Venezuelans, right? And I know they're getting a lot of aid from the city of Chicago and the American government in general. But there's something else that I noticed too. There's some nuance shit that ain't got nothing to do with no goddamn government system. They can rely on one another. They already are communing, right? They already operate as a unit. You know what I mean? And I think contextually, because they're foreigners, because they're in foreign land, it's like, all right, we all we got. We, because of maybe that button up urban league shit you say, we don't align like that. We don't think of each other like that. We don't even think of ourselves as a community, right? We see ourselves as sects of community, which is why I hold on to 95th Street. Nigga, you was from 87, you ain't from 95th Street. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You from Austin, you ain't from Garfield. You know what I mean? You ain't from 63rd, nigga, I'm from 64th. You know what I mean?
Your black ain't black enough.
It just keeps going. You know what I mean? Contextually though, which is why we don't have any power, right? So the real conversation is not that I'm opposed to the math of the South, the fertility of the South, the beauty of the South. I fuck with it. You know what I mean? I really do.
100%.
But before you can get there, the value asset has to be, I love black people.
So that's the thing. So that, like one of the things that they were alluding to earlier, because this is, you said it's funny because it's like we go from Kendrick and Drake to like Kamala and Trump, and then this whole when I turn black thing, right? And the truth of the matter is that, man, what is black? Black is
That's what I was
landless.
trying to get
Black
to.
is landless. You know what I'm saying? Like in real life, right?
Black is what?
Our black is landless. You know what I'm saying?
Landless.
Because landless. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else is black. They got land. We ain't got none.
You talking about Chicago?
I'm talking
No,
about
America.
I'm talking about America.
America.
We ain't got nothing that we run. And what this brother is putting forth in this book is saying, okay, well, we need to be able to control our destiny, right? For us to be in a state with the most units of government in all of the states of the United States, right? And also the most black politicians than any other state in the United States. Why are we having trouble with money? Why are we having trouble with crime? Why are we having trouble with everything else? And you said something earlier, I'm gonna lean to that. Where's the identity, right? And so if your identity is only like tied to 95th, 63rd, not from 63rd, it's like, okay, well we have no commonality, right?
But then okay. So then what is our identity?
That is for you and I to decide in our lifetime.
There's the keto right there, cuz. We ain't gotta go no further. And I think that's where we missed the mark, right? We have to take it upon us to decide. That is the next motion of building,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Because
So
we
even
like
when you
it.
came, hold up, when you came in with the Kamala shit, I agree with that.
You don't agree with what?
That Kamala's black. I don't.
Because by way of experience or by way of blood or
All
by
of
way
it.
of what?
Blackness is a political declaration to me, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm one of them people who align with the American descendants of slave construct,
Yep.
right?
I got you.
And until that idea came to me, although it's simple as fuck, it never even resonated to me to kind of grapple with that concept of identity. Right now, they built that shit around reparations. Reparations are not. I think the real value in that mission is giving Black Americans an identity, a real identity that you can hold on to
But you define that identity
through lineage.
through lineage, but also through politics.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The politics of how you were brought here,
Yes, I got you.
which makes a complete difference.
Because how she was brought here was very different.
Very different.
I feel you.
Right? Which in turn does not align with the political
I don't
declaration
disagree,
of
but
what our
no,
blackness is.
we don't disagree. It depends on who in the room, cause
So
when
let
we
me say this,
talking
I'm
amongst
sorry.
ourselves,
She is black. She ain't us.
we don't disagree.
That's all. I just want to clarify.
Do we not?
We don't
We,
disagree.
I promise we
We
agree.
don't disagree.
And Nigerian is black.
You
But he
understand?
ain't. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so when we start talking about blackness as a lived experience, I did a post on social media last week and I was like, y'all, it's a bajillion cultures already in the world, and even with the ones we got, it's new ones being created every day. But we only refer to one as the culture. We sleep on our own value. Anytime the culture that's the most oppressed is the one that's most lifted, we sleep on our own value. You see what I'm saying? I'm like, and it's called the culture because you can't have none of the other ones without this one. That's monopoly in socioeconomic terms. That's a monopoly.
But if we don't have land, you know what I'm saying? Like land, you own everything under it, everything over it, and everything that's within, right? If you don't have borders, then you don't have a way to be able to
Be defined.
capture.
To be defined.
Right, to be able to capture what the value is. Our intrinsic value has been our culture and who we are as a people. We actually, you know what I'm saying, like, we are people, at least in my definition, as a conscious New African citizen, right? We come from a lot of different West African tribes, indigenous people, and also Europeans. You can't throw them out either. That is who we are. And through that melting pot over 400 years, whether or not we like it or not, we are a whole different people, right? And what has happened is that because we don't have ownership, and when I say, like, it's other folks, man, that's able to come here, they ain't as politically astute or involved. But they got way more money. They got way more money, right? They got a way more defined identity. But that identity is defined through, like, the land that they claim at the end of the day. So it's like, okay, well, when are we gonna stake our claim to some land? Because you damn sure can't do it in Chicago. They had called the game in Chicago for the first black motherfucker got up here in 1910. Or we gonna say, like, man, you go back, you're like, oh man, well, you saw the man, he was black, you're like, he was mixed, you know what I'm saying? In my view, you're like, he mixed, right? At the end of the day, like, we don't own this land, and we ain't got, like, what we gonna do?
Because black by two's terms don't get elected. Black by two's terms don't get land.
Why?
Because the power base has already definitively decided on our behalf.
And so the other thing is, like, how has this country historically used immigration as a way to keep our people in check? People don't, you know what I'm saying? A lot of folks don't even know the history of, like, how, like, put like this. They didn't want this to turn into the Caribbean, so they opened the fucking floodgates. And we still are cool in this day and age. Like, 100 years from now, they're gonna be talking about what happened today on our watch. And because we're not as conscious about history, about how things have happened. And another thing, you're talking about the griots, right? Which is like being able to like pass down knowledge verbally. But I think like written is a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like the good book. You know what I'm saying? You got it written, everybody gonna kick it their own little way. You know what I'm saying? Whoever you gonna follow, you gonna follow. But it still need to be written. Where is that written code, and like what are we doing as the builders of today to be able to define what's gonna happen tomorrow? Because we are being flooded out right now, right? And it just so happened that the politics of that was stated before by the nigga that's in office. Like, oh man, these people, they work hard. We dying out. We gonna need them up in. But then you got somebody say, we ain't gonna do nothing only for black people. Even though we the motherfuckers that be voting them in. We got more black politicians in this state, in this city, than anywhere else. And why is we running?
So I make this argument on the podcast all the time. I make the argument on the podcast all the time that community grows capital. Capital don't grow community.
Yeah.
So what you got to understand that what comes first is love. Community grows capital. Capital cannot grow community. So even when you think of the Indians, they got land there. So that's first. That's definitive there. But when they got here, it ain't shit. But because they got love, they wrap them into the services of what we got. But whoever's here and doing some shit, you wrap in. Just because you showed the fuck up.
Yeah.
So it's still the love that becomes the driver. So when we, in my mind at least, and having the conversation, and that's why I leveraged the Venezuelans. Like as wild as that shit is showing up in our purview, it's still wrapped in an identity that we us. We all we got. The reason why we rock with Kamala, because our value system is stretched to only value things, which was taught by the masses, because that's their culture. They get away with that shit because they own everything. You don't gotta be anchored in the shit, because every time you go to Walgreens, you spending a white dollar. It's easy. You know what I'm saying? You go to Walmart, it's a white dollar. It's gonna get reinvested in our white lives. Right? You don't have to have that level of focus as a white person because y'all got 98% of the wealth. Right there. When you go in a room and you ask, you got a white man and a black man, you ask, even though we can say definitively we don't really have an identity. We can say that. But if you ask a black man what's it mean to be black, he got an answer. You ask a white man what it means to be white, he ain't got no answer. That's the definitive of whiteness. We don't got to think about this shit.
That's right.
Right? So the only difference is we the same motherfucker without the resource. Right? But in order to get the resource, we got to let go of their idea.
But when you say we the same, I guess where I get caught up.
I think we dark-skinned white people.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I do not believe that.
I think a lot of us
for
are.
all my travels, I do not believe that. In fact, I believe that we are the most African of the Africans. You hear what I'm saying? That's like that. Like
Who is we?
I'm talking about.
I think that's a great question.
Okay, so you know what I'm saying? I'm speaking specifically on the descendants of American freedom, right? And then when you move it a little bit further for people like myself who believe that we supposed to have land, specifically, you know what I'm saying? We call ourselves conscious new African citizens. So yeah, that's.
But all of us free and new African citizens with all these damn pocketbooks and bank accounts and degrees. Because my thing is, if you shimmy your ass through a pipe and it's full of soot, when you come out that other end, you're going to have soot on your body.
What's the comparison?
Yeah, the comparison is if all this shit is white all the time, and we have to survive in it, it's in the air we breathe, and if it's, to your point earlier, Jim, if there is not a heightened sense of awareness, you will be white and have no clue how you got there, when you got there, what part of you is, what part of you ain't. At least, as I sit here in my...
Explain to me what's white and then explain to me what's black in y'all view.
Well, my thing is it's all a social construct that's rooted in behaviors, right? It's rooted in behaviors and beliefs. It's rooted in ways to go about and get about so that you don't die, right? Because this shit is founded on it. And it's rooted in, right? Like, I wouldn't participate in capitalism if I didn't have to participate. Like, I would rather just like do it the way my grandma did it. But the way
Be in your garden, grow your food.
Man, sit on my porch with my baby.
That's still a choice. You could choose to do
Well,
that.
you can, but then the consequence is then I ain't gonna hold the resources that's necessary to be doing the building you talking about. Especially when my cousins on the block ain't trying to do none of it. So we can't live completely outside of the system that is killing us. So now we got to mitigate, because it's not an either or, it's a yes and. I gotta be in it. I gotta navigate through it. I gotta be conscious and aware of how it moves so that I can use those tools, but know how to lay them down. Like, you damn near strip out of whiteness in the foyer of your house so as not to traipse it all through your home. You know what I mean? But if you don't know consciously, to the point of Kamala Harris, that you take that shit off at the door, then you somewhere with girls twerking at the damn pep rally, because that's what it was. And I'm like, who are you talking to, friend? Who is this for? You have no sense of your people, and you think you're using the tools we use to talk This ain't how we talk, this is how we party. We try to have a conversation. You know what I mean? So if you don't have a heightened sense of awareness, not so that you can, I'm not of the mind that it is in our best interest to completely relinquish whiteness, because we gonna build this thing with no tools that we need to operate and function in it. But I do think we have to have an awareness, and I think that's where we've lost our social identity. We don't know when we being white.
Could you define what whiteness is?
Yeah, it's a code of behaviors that white people exhibit. It's things like having a false sense of urgency. It's things like worshiping documentation. If there's no written word, it doesn't, CYA culture. It's things like patriarchy and paternalism. It's things like only having one right way, and typically it's whatever I say if I hold power. These are all social constructs of whiteness.
Okay, and then what's the opposite of that? What's I'm saying, like, so if whiteness, you know what I'm saying, like, I used to be a painter, so it's like, okay, well, you got white men on the other end of the spectrum, you got black, so what's blackness?
So I think that's exactly the challenge that we're having. I think that we can codify whiteness, because it's 98% of everything everywhere. We done seen it, we can touch it, we can feel it, I can smell it. When it's in the room, I come in, I turn around, I go out, right? But blackness, because it was not codified like being a Venezuelan, it has not been codified. So now anybody can get in it, anybody can get it. It's like Taylor Swift thinks she's white every second Thursday, black every second Thursday of the month, because it hasn't, and that's why I asked that question. So then what is the social identity of blackness? Because we like to celebrate that it's not a monolith. Like, we love that about ourselves. And whiteness is, for the most part, a monolith. It can be codified, right? The downside to that is we can't tell nobody what it is.
I would argue.
No, it's cool. I think that to your point, even with the rally with Kamala, some people would say that her twerking was a rites of passage to prove that she was black. Just like
to somebody.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just like some would say they're all wearing a kufa, kick their cloths, and kneeling at the whatever is a rites of passage. I think it goes back to your point. And what we're saying here, I think that this is so hard to be defined because there are different languages that trace all the way back to the boat, and ain't nobody,
It's not codified.
it ain't no sense of whatever. So what it means, seeing Meg and seeing Kamala do the nay-nay, that means something to a certain people group. Seeing people kneel and put on the coat, somebody advised them to do that.
Probably like
Y'all see that voter guy that was released the other day? He said, you niggas better listen. Or you niggas something. He said, you niggas something. You see that shit? Jamel Hill posted it the other day. It just came to my mind.
But and it's complicated to me because I want to name that shit is performative AF, right? The nay-nay and the twerking and all this. I also want to say it's a kissing cousin to coonery, right? And at the same time, I love everything about that culture because it's a part of who I am and it resonates with me. But when it's weaponized,
But it's when it's appropriate.
when it's weaponized, it's a problem. And that was a weapon.
It's just like the concept. I say nigga like it's somebody's name, right? But I do not want to see a voter guide that says, this is how you niggas should vote.
Do it matter who wrote it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So if
just like in any
so if
other
a
culture, right, where
black
the gays
dude-
can call each other bitch,
Yeah.
a women
Cool
can call each
with
other
it.
bitch.
Cool
It's
with
not
it.
acceptable for
That's
me
right.
because I'm not a part of that culture,
Yeah.
right? I was just listening to the definitive of whiteness and the question of what blackness is, and traditionally, and that's what I mean. Like that's the thing that we got to build. Traditionally, what blackness has been just been in opposition of what whiteness is.
And that still centers them, it still prioritizes them, it still focuses on them.
So even when we say shit like the culture, I struggle with that. Because that ain't us either, in my opinion.
We don't know what it is.
Right, and it's open and accessible to everybody.
Totally.
And most of the people who use the language, the culture, I would not consider culturally relevant in my own. Right? Because they do a lot of shit. It's the Turk girl, it's Meg, it's the Joe Buttons of the world. It's the motherfuckers that scared to call white people on their bullshit. Fear can't exist in that space. If you really, and that's what love is, right? Fear and love can't occupy the same space. So if it's the culture and you represent us, then you can't suck dick to be next to them. It don't work that way.
And then, and to the second you say it all gets rooted in love, which it ain't no two ways about that for me. But we have also unclear definitions about what that is. Even, forget the world, because God knows we ain't got it. In the Black community, our definition or sense of love is so warped that even if we were trying to found our collective identity of Blackness in love, in some ways I'm leaning towards the reality that we would just be back in the same place because that's been so contorted and weaponized and abused that unless we develop a common understanding and definition of what love is, then we might as well be talking about the culture.
Well, I do rock with the book concept, conceptually, and what I rock with James too in the same space is that to the land point, it represents success. And it's almost like the Muhammad Ali quote to me. Like there's a quote that Muhammad Ali had where he's talking to Howard Cosell. And Howard Cosell said something, I mean, you talk about this black shit, but you got Rolls Royce. And Muhammad Ali said, no, I drive two. He said, because if I didn't have it, they wouldn't listen to me. Not that I give a fuck about these Rolls Royces, but I know what it means to you. Right? And I wonder, stylistically, I guess you could say, if you leverage the Rolls Royces as bait, or you leverage the land as bait, I know you can move the needle, but will the people value the Rolls Royces or the concept?
I think it's you gotta be moving both lanes at the same time, because I think where hip hop culture was at its finest, aside from the misogyny, because that was there from the beginning, was when we were talking to each other on the inner parts. Self-destruction, you're headed for self-destruction, right? Like, we was talking about jimmying up, so we wasn't passing STDs to one another. And they were still wearing big ass dope chains, right? Duke chains and all the Adidas you could put on one human being, right? So all of that land, success was in the culture, but the message was love. It was, aside from the misogyny, the message was still love. And that hip hop brought us together. Think about our day of hip hop. We was tight. We was in PWIs rocking with one another the way the Venezuelans do, because we had those messages and those images in common. I went to an all-white Catholic Christian brothers. First generation don't know shit about college. But that hip hop culture that brought us together was rooted in love, and I just knew to go find 8 more of my people. I'm still tight with them people to this day. And that's the proof that the love will work. We had a common definition though. They out here talking about doing all kinds of things to each other's bodies and calling that love. That's not gonna tie no, that ain't gonna bind nobody together.
I think.
Where you at?
I'm somewhere else. I live my life by a certain principle. Right? What I'm consciously doing in my neighborhood is a demonstration, and I don't think, you know what I'm saying, I'm not a man of words, I'm a man of action. So like I gotta actually do and perform the feat for people to understand what it is that I want to see. That's one.
But why do we have to choose, Jim? And can you do love?
What do you mean?
Do you know what I'm saying? You got land, 2 talking about love. I'm saying I run a theater in Austin because it was being run by white people. And I was like, y'all keep saying it's ours, I don't understand. So I'm gonna come do it so it can be ours. That's land. How we run that space is rooted in love. I've been there 7 months, 8.
What's space you do?
K. Ryan Center for the Arts.
Okay, so we did the my collaborative sponsored when they did the Ghana ceremony there.
A few weeks ago.
That's where we was at. That
Yeah.
time?
Yeah,
I'm the ED of that space. So that's the land, but how we function in that space is love. I've been there 8 months and it's a game changer. It runs completely differently because we literally handed out All About Love by bell hooks in a staff meeting, and it's the foundation of everything we do. So I'm saying yes, not yes or no or yes. I'm saying with love land, right? Love land. Where is the course that roots us in land and love? Because the other thing that land does is it gives us a sense of place. We know where to find each other. Do you know what I'm saying? It gives us a geography. The definition of love gives us a understanding. The land gives us a place to go understand in. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I feel like unless we have those things in tandem, we missing a part of something.
You know what I mean? So I mentioned that I'm a conscious New African citizen. New Africans started this month. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about Blk August. That's that. We're talking about the continuation of the work that had been laid down. I'm you know what I'm saying, like, this is not going back to the 1800s. I typically like to just stop at Queen Mother Moore, right? And moving forward from her. The current reparations argument, you know what I'm saying, is built on books and pamphlets that she wrote. And she's a conscious New African citizen. Matter of fact, she's the first signer of the document that I believe in, right? So, like, my mentors been doing this stuff in love for a long time, right? And it is a long story history that's been hidden from our people, right? But it's right here in plain day.
Yeah.
The most famous New African citizen, you know what I'm saying, was somebody who lost his way trying to be one of these motherfucking niggas, you know what I'm saying, on the street, you know what I'm saying?
I was just gonna bring that shit up. Today, hey, we talking about Mutulu Shakur, right? And it's Tupac Shakur, right? And if you get to the underlying story of Tupac Shakur, the goal of Tupac's journey to success was to kind of lead this kind of new African nation to prosperity, I guess you would say, right? Like you said, lost his way through whatever measures, you know what I mean? But that's what America is, in my opinion. And just in general, right? That's why I said Venezuela is showing and proving that shit now. Give them 50 years. You said the shit the other day we was up here. You like, I'm gonna stop saying black, and I was like, yeah, I ain't fucking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even like, because like everybody, like.
Well, let me finish the statement, cuz.
Okay.
You say I'm stopping. It's not that I didn't understand it. I clearly understand it, right? And it makes logical sense. You just said a minute ago, most people don't even understand American immigration. Until what, 1965? It was us and them. So, if we look at the remnants of the Arabs, the Asians, the whomever, right? 70 years in, right? Or whatever the bad is, man, 60 something years in, right? You got Chinatown branching out past Chinatown. There's a new wave of homeowners from Chinese families don't want to be in Chinatown. They don't want to live like the Chinese.
Right.
They grew up on TV. Fuck this shit. I want a Tesla. I want a Lakeview. I don't speak Mandarin. Fuck you people. Another 20 years from now, Chinatown ain't gonna be there no more.
That's not true. Because the thing is that, you know what I'm saying, it still gives those people who branch out a reference point, right? And we don't give a fuck about our reference points, you know what I'm saying? I just talked about country, you know what I'm saying? Like, but we could use the other black folks that's in our culture, whether they Jamaicans, whether they Nigerians, whether they Haitians, they still go back to their reference point, right? And our reference point, what was supposed to be our reference point, our people chose to leave that shit behind because of pain, right? And like, I will argue, after all the traveling I did, that same type of pain exists in all the places that these people that came from.
And they still go home.
They still go home.
Yeah, they do.
They can reconcile, they know, you know what I'm saying, like, nigga, this is ours, right? And then when you go somewhere, you can flex, be like, yeah, this is ours. Just like when we go anywhere, we be like, oh man, we from Chicago, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it means something to us, because it actually do mean something, right? Because we built, at least from a cultural standpoint, right, something real here. You know what I'm saying? Our people have built something real here over the last 100 years from a cultural standpoint. But as it pertains to like from politics and actually being able to have like control of our own destinies, we have not done that. And so,
Contrast I was leveraging in that statement though was time.
They still, even with time, they still got the reference point, bro.
Hear what I'm
Because
saying?
they got land.
Hear what I'm saying? We're gauging that shit from 1965 to 2024. You understand what I'm saying? They got the land, sure. We're talking about the behaviors on this soil.
We can talk about the Irish, we can talk about the Italians, the people that been here longer, right? You know what I'm saying? The Germans, bro, you know what I'm saying? The French. It like when you started dealing with folks,
Great
the
example.
Jews, bro.
Great
You know what I'm
example.
saying? Like,
All of them, even the white folks, do they identify with Ireland or do they identify with whiteness?
so hear what I'm saying, because you like we not saying nothing different. With like my understanding is a little bit different than yours. So where we going as a community, I keep saying that we are like in 30 years it's over with, right? Because what our people have chosen to do is to continue to assimilate. And with that means that goddamn it, you know what I'm saying? Oh, well, you can get you some, you can get you some, you can get you some. And goddamn it, we ain't gonna have. Like, that's why I'm like, fuck that black shit, right? Because ain't no limit to it. It's like, oh man, you got one drop of black blood? Oh, come on to the party. You know what I'm saying? Like, we ain't got no boundaries. And that is where, like, so if we becoming like white folks, then I would agree in that regard, right? Because it's like, oh well shit, I'm a little bit of every motherfucking thing. That's how the whitest white folks, right? That's how they roll. And they like, oh yeah, well I'm Irish, motherfucking this, that, and the third, and some more shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, well, they ain't really shit. They at that point, they call themselves Americans, but they own the narrative, the real estate in like the narrative as far as real estate in this country. We would never have that shit unless we continue to spy the whiteness. And goddamn it, the black women right now, don't fuck with them some white men and shit, because that's the main thing that's happening. The brothers go out and go find them some more goddamn it foreigns, because that's one of the main things that's happening. And then like, I don't consider, like, you know what I'm saying, like for my form of life, you know what I'm saying, Adonis ain't black to me. You know what I'm saying? Like Drake's son, that nigga he ain't black. Goddamn it, Patrick Mahomes, his motherfucking son, he not black. So like, where the fuck we gonna draw the line at? You know what I'm saying?
Well, y'all saying the same thing in that regard, because you said the same thing about Kamala, and I don't disagree. But when Yolanda's like, well, how black is black, and who gets to be black, and all of this, I think we have to start talking. I would be interested in how you would respond to that based on the land concept that you are committed to. But I think for me, there are, just like whiteness is rooted in some unequivocally codified lived ways of being and experiences. And this will piss some people off, some people I know, some people I'm close with. if we codified what blackness was, some folks just would not qualify, even though their parents, you know what I mean, you know what I'm saying, have black blood. If we look at your lived experience and you are choosing to function, and I mean making an explicit choice, like rolling around like a pig in the shit in whiteness, and then coming over here because of what your bloodline is, to me, that's not the same thing. You don't get to come over here. Stay your ass over there, because no matter how much blood you got in your body, if your lived experience is supporting the codification and promotion of whiteness, then go be over there. You know what I mean? So that's when we talk about, well, she black, but she ain't black. You know, we say it 2 times when we talk about the kind we talk about. You know what I mean? And I think as soon as non-black black people get offended, then we start adjusting for inclusion. But then what is supposed to happen to the folks whose lived experience is codified by being locked out of participating in economic development, being locked out of land ownership, being locked out of having healthful families? I ain't talking about intact, whatever that means, but healthful families. We being locked out of that. And I pause, I give pause, because the same way I don't want to define blackness based on what whiteness is doing, I also kind of don't want to define blackness based on lack and disenfranchisement. But the reality is that it is defined by that because it's how it was
like a
born.
motherfucker right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rallying call, right?
Yeah, to do something different.
People usually, you know what I'm saying, all you gotta do is find a common enemy, you know what I'm saying? And that's enough, a lot of times, to go ahead and
Do something about it.
Sorry.
Yeah. And
I got a question.
yeah, I was just gonna say one last thing, and that is that I had a conversation with Fred Hampton Jr. last week, and he was like, well, blackness is a reactionary culture. And I didn't like that.
That's true.
But he right.
When I was done not liking it, what else could it be? It's in reaction to trauma, trigger, slave ships, and folks dead in the Atlantic. Of course it's a reactionary. It had to react to the trauma that created it as a thing. Blackness didn't exist before trauma. Trauma existed and then blackness existed.
Which is why I said, fuck being black. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? It's time to turn that thing. Somebody else made that shit up. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Oh, that
y'all
make me
black.
grieve.
They
Jim,
made
I'm
it
gonna
up.
get on your shit, but we got to grieve that thing because, you know,
Can we just keep the collard greens and the black eyed peas? Because,
No, we
and
can
I
do
really
all
want
that
y'all to
shit.
bring some here. Because the way my body is set up right now, I'm just like, I need some greens and some okra and some black eyed peas.
I seen the motherfucker online call that shit slave food 2 days ago, and I'm like, well, you know what? You say, yeah, don't nobody else in the black world
That made me
eat
feel bad.
African American food because it's slave food. I'm sitting back like, and I was like,
Call it
slave
what you
food.
want, sir.
I'm like slave food. I'm like, you know what? Hey, it's a whole bunch of ethnicities. They goddamn every time I walk inside a slave food joint, they up in there goddamn it eating and shit. You know what? Like fuck you.
Slave food joint.
You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna make me some slave food. What is this? I've been waiting all week to make some black eyed peas.
I think when we have the screening, we should just
shit, I made some slave food last night.
Listen.
Me too.
It was so good.
If I get him out of here, I'm gonna go get some more.
I'm just saying.
Eating all that good garbage.
I make the cleanest. But even that, we laughing at that shit, right? And this goes back to the conversation of building too for me, right? It's building an identity, right? You say American descendant of freedom, I say American descendant of slavery. Contextually, even the Chicago shit, where you was like, you know, I want to get away from here. This 2 flat or 3 flat or whatever it was. You niggas over here this and they this and they this. The culture itself, right? Ingenuity grows out of lack. It is beauty in the fucking struggle. You just got to open your fucking eyes. That's where the value of all of this shit is. It's down here. It's not up there. The value is down here. It's always down here. But we've been mesmerized by the concept of whiteness and scarcity, where we have confused where the fucking value lies.
I think we lost our reference point. You know what I'm saying? That was on purpose. So,
What was the reference point?
Our reference point was always, you know what I'm saying, what the black belt of the United States, going all the way from Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, to East Texas. You know what I'm saying? And somehow, you know what I'm saying, like, I've seen it in my own lifetime where, you know what I'm saying, like, the reference point now, at least for our people, it's all in fuck shit. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
It's like the internet.
15 years ago, if somebody said, hey, right, that wouldn't have been nothing. You hear what I'm saying? But you know what that's the whole call. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole call, like, oh shit, hey, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? You know what I'm saying? That shit come from somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
You want to respect it.
I'm saying, it's like when they up there calling, it's like, hey.
That shit is funny. Come on, Brandon Jim. Listen, you better get and put a disclaimer when you about to do shit like that. You got to give a sister a warning.
Right? And so, like, the reference, like, the two was making the point, it's like, oh, it's all the way down there. I'm thinking about, like, one of my homies and shit, he was a traveler, right? When he was a teenager, he went down, he stayed by Chico Bay, he didn't want to be there, he wanted to be in the hood, right? So he took his ass to Kingston, he started traveling out there. In the 90s, right? And when I think about
Black people, and for me, that's the definition of blackness. That shit right there. Hey yo, blackness is what you doing right here. Go to the desert and do the same thing. Black. Your ass from the west side. Let me see. Go to Timbuktu, and if west side show up right there, your ass is black as hell. That's all. You don't need nobody. Listen. For me, blackness cannot be infiltrated. It can stand on its own. It ain't mimicking. It ain't mocking. It ain't copying. It's creating right on its own.
And y'all just calling it three different things, but we referring to the same thing. But the problem is we often can't hear each other. How many times we have to like get our language clear and be like, no, I'm saying what you're saying. No, you're right. You know, Kamala's a different breed or whatever, you know. Because we don't have common language, and that go back to 1619. And that go back to two being on the plane to China. If you don't speak the same language, 400 years from now, we still gonna be like, say that one more time. What you mean?
So let me ask you this. If you went to China for 3 years, could you produce 95th Street then?
I had to have a woman make it happen, yeah.
I'm just saying, regardless of what you need.
Yeah.
Well, no, I feel like an important need. I respect that.
I'm just saying, regardless of what you need, could you in your own body produce that?
Yeah.
You would have to have black.
But that's still a conversation of love too, though, right? And I'm a rarity in that context. Like, I live authentically. You understand what I'm saying? I know I'm intelligent, but I got braids in my head too. I know what that looks like in a white construct, but I know I don't give a fuck. So I know how different that is. You know what I mean? I'm a member of Alpha, but I don't carry that as a badge like to validate me.
Yeah, answers.
I'm pretty sure we're twins.
But I'm dead ass, right? Even when we was in college, you know I ain't never wore no Perry, I ain't
Listen.
none of that shit. You know what I'm saying?
That's just it.
Yeah. So it's because I'm comfortable in being two. You know what I mean? And all of us don't operate like that. I just work
You know,
good.
I honestly said I started Chicago and Virginia.
And I don't know how this iPad
What'd you
works.
say?
I honestly say I started Chicago and Virginia. Me and
Oh,
my
man.
mafia and my gangster buddies. You know what I'm saying? That's when we was kids.
You started it,
I started in Chicago and Virginia. Oh yeah, no doubt.
you created it.
We turned the neighborhood into what it was we wanted. And